The birthday banner was the first thing I saw when I came around the side of my own house. Happy Birthday TAMRA in gold letters, strung between my two crepe myrtles. Over 40 people I had never met, drinking in my backyard, their kids screaming in my pool. My name is Daniel Rowe. I'm 52, and I want to tell you this straight, because everyone in Camden Glen eventually heard a crooked version of it. I am not, and have never been, a member of that homeowners association. My house isn't in it. And the woman whose birthday banner hung over my pool that July afternoon had spent 5 months making me believe she was my friend, specifically so that this day could happen. Let me go back to the start, because the start is the part that still costs me something to tell. I moved to Raleigh after the divorce, and after my father died the same winter. One long gray season of losing things. I bought an older brick ranch on Willow Bend, a street that predated the subdivision that grew up around it. Camden Glen, the master-planned community with the clubhouse and the entrance monument, had been built in the 2000s, right up against the old lots on my street, so that from the air, my house looked like it was inside Camden Glen. It wasn't. My parcel was platted in 1978, decades before the association existed, and it had never been folded into it. I knew that with certainty, because for 25 years I worked as a title insurance underwriter. My entire career was reading the chain of title, figuring out who actually owns a piece of land, what's recorded against it, which association has a hook in it and which doesn't. When I bought the house, I pulled the plat and the covenants myself, out of habit, and I saw in plain recorded language that Willow Bend Lot 4 was outside the Camden Glen Declaration. No dues, no board, no architectural committee. I remember feeling relieved about it. I remember thinking, good, one less thing. What I did not have that first winter was a single friend. I'm not going to dress it up. I was 52, freshly divorced, my father 3 months in the ground, and I did not know how to talk to people anymore. I'd go days without saying a word out loud. I installed a video doorbell my second week there, and I'm not proud of the reason. It was so that when the little chime went off and the app showed me a delivery driver, there'd be a person, some person, on my screen. That's how alone I was. Remember the doorbell. It matters later, more than anything. Then Tamra and Brad Voss knocked on my door with a foil-covered dish. Tamra was 48, warm in a way that felt like sunlight after a long indoors. A realtor, she said, worked the whole area, knew everyone. Brad was big and easy and laughed at his own jokes. They'd seen me moving in alone, they said. They thought I could use a home-cooked meal. And over the next weeks they did the things that friends do. Brad helped me wrestle my father's oak desk up the stairs. Tamra brought me the name of a good HVAC guy when my AC died in the first heat. They invited me to their cookouts. They asked about my life, and they listened, or seemed to. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like I existed in someone's eyes. I was so grateful I didn't notice the questions. Because Tamra asked questions, gentle ones, folded into the warmth. How I liked the house, whether I'd had trouble with the closing, whether I'd signed everything with the association when I moved in. And when I said I wasn't in the association, she smiled and said, "Oh, of course, the old lots," and moved on so smoothly I forgot she'd asked. She loved my backyard. She said it more than once, standing at the edge of my pool with a glass of wine. "You know the clubhouse doesn't even have a real pool? Just that awful little wading thing. You've got the best yard on the whole side." I took it as a compliment from a friend. It was a survey. In July, I drove up to see my mother in Virginia for a long weekend. I told Tamra I'd be gone. She said, "Have a wonderful time. We'll keep an eye on the place." I remember being touched by that. I came back Sunday afternoon to the banner, and the cars, and the 40 strangers, and the children in my pool. I stood on the side path with my overnight bag still in my hand, and I could not make the picture make sense. A catering table, a cooler line, a Bluetooth speaker on my patio playing country music, and TAMRA, in a sundress, moving through it all like a host, like the woman of the house, until she saw me and came over with her arms already open. "Dan, you're back early!" As if I were the guest, as if I'd wandered into her party. "TAMRA, what is this?" "It's my birthday, silly." She laughed, light, for the benefit of the people nearby.
"We figured you wouldn't mind. I mean, the yard's kind of everybody's now, isn't it? It's a community space." She said it warmly, certainly, the way you state a thing that's already been decided somewhere above your head. "Grab a drink, relax. You're always so tense." "The yard's kind of everybody's now." I heard the sentence, and my underwriter's brain snagged on it the way it snags on a bad legal description. Because a yard is not kind of everybody's. A yard is owned by a person on a deed, and mine was owned by me, and this woman was telling 40 people otherwise in my own backyard. "It's not everybody's," I said. "It's mine. This is my house. You need to have everyone leave." Her face did something then. Just a flicker, gone in an instant, the smile clicking back over the top of it. "Dan," she said, softer, sadder, pitched for the neighbors. "Don't make this a thing. It's my birthday." And a man near the pool, someone I'd never seen, said to the woman beside him, loud enough to carry, "That's the guy who gave his yard to the HOA and now he's being weird about it." Gave his yard to the HOA. I didn't understand it yet. I would. I went inside my own house, past people using my kitchen, and I sat down at my table and opened my laptop and logged into the Camden Glen resident portal, which I'd been given access to months ago, just so you can see the calendar, TAMRA had said. And there, filed under my address, was a document I had never seen in my life. A declaration of annexation. Willow Bend, Lot 4, voluntarily annexed into the Camden Glen Homeowners Association. Signed, it said, by Daniel Rowe. Notarized, recorded. I had not signed it. I had never seen it. The signature was a decent forgery, but it wasn't mine. I've watched my own hand sign my name for 52 years, and that wasn't it. And the date on it, the date I had supposedly stood before a notary and given my land to the association, was a date in March, when I had been in Virginia at my father's estate attorney's office, 400 miles away, with a paper trail to prove it. TAMRA Voss had forged my property into her association, and the birthday party in my backyard was her showing the whole neighborhood that it had worked. I want to tell you I handled the next part well. I did not. I went back outside and I told everyone, loudly, that this was private property and they were trespassing and they needed to leave. Some of them started gathering their kids, embarrassed. Most of them looked at me like I was the problem, because in their minds, I was the man who donated his yard and was now throwing a fit about it, the story already planted in them before they ever set foot on my grass. And Brad Voss stepped in front of me. "Hey, hey! You're upsetting my wife!" He put a hand flat on my chest. "Board voted the yard's a community space. You signed off. Don't embarrass yourself, man." And he shoved me. A real shove, 2 hands, the kind meant to move a person backward and make him feel small in front of a crowd. Something in me that had been holding on since the divorce, since my father, since months of silence, simply let go. I shoved him back. He swung. We went down together onto my own patio, 48 and 50 and neither of us any good at it, scattering a table, and people were shouting, and somebody called the police, and I remember lying there with my ear ringing, thinking, distantly, "This is my house. I am fighting a man on the concrete I paid for, in front of a party I wasn't invited to, at my own home. The police came, and here is where Tamra Voss showed me what she really was, because she was ready for them. She had the story loaded before the cruiser stopped. An aggressive neighbor, a disturbance at a community event, and she had the declaration of annexation on her phone, official, recorded, and she showed it to the officers, and the officers looked at a recorded HOA document and looked at the sweating, furious man it named, and they told me to take it up with the association, and they left. They left. On my property, with her party still half standing in my yard. That was the lowest I have ever been. Lower than the divorce. Because at least in the divorce I understood what was happening to me. That night, alone, bruised, humiliated, I finally opened the doorbell app. The camera I'd installed because I was too lonely to bear an empty screen. And I started watching. And I understood that I had documented my own betrayal without knowing it. The next morning, Audrey Kim knocked on my door. She was 60, lived across the street on the old side, not in the association either. I'd seen her, but we'd never spoken. She stood on my porch and she said, "I tried to tell you. Months ago I waved you over, and you were polite and you kept walking, and I understood. You didn't know me. But I want you to know I tried." She took a breath. "Everybody on this street thinks you and Tamra Voss are old friends. She's been telling people for months that you gave your yard to the community, that you're basically on the board's side. That's why nobody's talked to you, Daniel. They thought you were one of hers." I stood there and felt the floor tilt, because it explained the whole thing. My loneliness in this place, the neighbors who wouldn't meet my eye, the silence that had made Tamra's friendship feel like the only warm thing in a cold town. She had built that. She had isolated me on purpose, with a rumor, so that when the day came, there'd be no one I could turn to, no one who'd warn me, no one who'd take my side against the beloved president of the HOA. She'd made me lonely, so she could be the only person I trusted. The warmth and the isolation were the same tool, used from both ends. I did not cry in front of Audrey Kim. I waited until she left. Then a young guy named Ted Lang messaged me through the neighborhood app. He was 34, actually in Camden Glen, on some committee, and he couldn't stand it anymore. He sent me screenshots of the HOA board's group chat. And there it was, in Tamra's own words, going back before I'd even finished moving in. "Working the Willow Bend guy. He's lonely, easy, no family around. Once he trusts us, the annexation's simple, notaries handled. That pool doubles the clubhouse comps. My listings on this street jump 10% minimum. Yards ours by summer." Yards ours by summer. She'd written it in February, before a single one of Brad's friendly favors. The desk he carried up my stairs, the casseroles, the cookouts, the HVAC guy, every warm thing either of them had ever done for me had been line items in an operation to steal my backyard, and I had been so starved for friends that I'd mistaken the theft for kindness. That's the part I still can't fully put down. Not the pool, the friendship. She had counterfeited the only close thing in my life, and she'd done it on purpose, and she'd written it down. I called a lawyer, Janine Pruce, real estate and title litigation, downtown Raleigh. I brought her the plat, the recorded covenants, the forged declaration, my father's estate attorney records putting me in Virginia on the notary date, the doorbell footage, Audrey's account, and Ted's screenshots. She read it all, slowly, and then she set her pen down. "Let me make sure I understand what she did," Janine said. "She didn't just trespass. She forged a real estate instrument, a recorded declaration annexing your land into a corporation, with a fake notarization, to manufacture authority over property that was never theirs. Then she used that forged authority to physically occupy your yard,
and to tell 40 people and the police that your land was theirs to use. She almost smiled, the way a professional smiles at a thing that is going to be very satisfying to take apart. People think trespass is a small thing, and a guy hopping your fence is. But trespass under the color of a forged property right, as part of a scheme to seize the land, that's not small. Add the forgery, add the fraudulent notary, add Brad putting hands on you first, and add that she orchestrated all of it. That's a criminal case, Daniel, a real one. We built it the way I'd spent 25 years building title files, every fact pinned where the next could lean on it.
The 1978 plat and the recorded declaration proving Willow Bend Lot 4 was never, at any point, inside Camden Glen. The forged annexation with its impossible March date and its notary, who, when Janine ran the commission number, turned out to have let her seal lapse 2 years earlier, meaning the notarization wasn't just false, it was performed by someone with no authority at all. My estate attorney records, and the doorbell footage, which had captured, across that whole afternoon, TAMRA directing the party as though she owned my land, Brad's two-handed shove landing before I ever touched him, and TAMRA telling a guest, plainly on camera, "The yard's a community amenity now, Dan just took some convincing." Just took some convincing. 5 months of counterfeit friendship, summarized to a party guest in 4 words, recorded by the lonely man's doorbell. Discovery opened the rest of it. TAMRA Voss hadn't dreamed this up alone. The subpoenaed board chat and her realtor correspondence showed the whole shape. A pool and a big yard, added to Camden Glen's common amenities, would raise the comparable values across the subdivision, and TAMRA held the listings on Willow Bend and 2 adjacent streets. My backyard was worth tens of thousands of dollars in bumped commissions to her, personally, plus the association's own interest in a real pool. The property management company that ran Camden Glen's day-to-day had seen the annexation and hadn't questioned it, because a bigger common area meant higher dues, meant a bigger management fee. Brad was just the muscle who believed his wife. TAMRA was the mind, and the mind had been running this since before I unpacked. She didn't fold, and she didn't apologize, because TAMRA Voss had spent her whole life getting by on charm and had never once needed a conscience to close a deal. She turned the neighborhood harder against me. She got Ted removed from his committee. She told people Audrey was a bitter old woman whose memory was going. She played the tearful victim of the violent loner so well that for a few weeks even I wondered if I'd imagined how good she'd been to me. That's the thing about a person like that. They're so fluent in warmth that their cruelty feels like you're misunderstanding. She caught me alone once, in the street, before the hearing. No cameras that she knew of. And she dropped the mask for exactly 1 sentence, close and quiet, and smiling for anyone watching from a window. "That yard's going to be a community pool by next summer, Dan. You're one sad man with no friends and a lawyer you can't afford. Who do you think they're going to believe?" She really believed that was the whole board. Who do you think they're going to believe? She had built her entire life on the answer being, me. They'll believe me. She had never once been in a room where the record outranked the performance. She'd never met a title underwriter. The court froze the forged declaration first, enjoined the association from calling my land a common area, from entering it, from holding one more thing on it. And then, the reckoning happened where I asked Janine to let it happen. At the Camden Glen annual members meeting, in the clubhouse, in front of the whole neighborhood, that had spent months believing I was TAMRA's crooked friend. I brought a laptop and a projector. I put up the 1978 plat and the recorded covenants, and I showed 200 of my neighbors, in plain recorded language, that my house had never been part of their association, and never could be, without my genuine signature, which did not exist. I put up the forged declaration beside my estate attorney's dated records, placing me 400 miles away on the day I supposedly notarized it, and beside the notary commission that had lapsed 2 years before. And then I played the doorbell footage. TAMRA hosting my yard like its owner. Brad's shove, unmistakable, first. And TAMRA's own voice, to a stranger, on my patio. The yard's a community amenity now. Dan just took some convincing. The room went very quiet. Then Ted Lang stood up and read 3 lines from the board chat. He's lonely, easy, yard's ours by summer, and sat back down. And Audrey Kim stood up and said, simply, that she'd watched a woman spread a lie to make a grieving man friendless, and that she was ashamed the whole street had believed it, herself included, for a while. 200 people who had been told a story sat and watched the record dismantle it, sentence by recorded sentence. TAMRA did not break. In her deposition, she did not say she couldn't recall. She said, and Janine let her talk because a woman explaining why her forgery was really generosity is a woman handing you the rope, that she had acted in the best interest of the community, that the annexation reflected what Daniel would have wanted once he settled in, that she'd been bringing a lonely man into the neighborhood. She defended counterfeiting my signature as a kindness to me. It was the truest thing she ever said in a way. She really did think that rewriting other people's reality to suit her own was a form of care. Here is how it landed. The court quieted title in my favor, a formal, recorded judgment that Willow Bend Lot 4 is not now, and never has been, part of Camden Glen, and cannot be annexed without my authentic, notarized consent. The forged declaration was struck from the record as though it had never been, which, legally, it never had. The assault charge TAMRA had tried to hang on me collapsed the instant the footage showed Brad's hands on my chest first. My countersuit for the forced entry and the fraud settled against the association and its management company, who paid and who I made put in writing, this mattered more to me than the money, a recorded acknowledgement that my property was private and their annexation was false. And TAMRA Voss went to prison. Not for hopping a fence. You're right that they don't jail people for that. She went for what she actually did, forging a real estate instrument, using a lapsed notary to fake its execution, recording it to seize property that wasn't hers, and orchestrating the trespass and the fraud as a scheme for her own financial gain. Forgery of a recorded property document is a felony in North Carolina. Real estate fraud is a felony. Stack them. Add that she was the organizer, add the assault her scheme provoked, and a judge does not give you probation. She got real time, a sentence measured in years, not a fine. And she lost the realtor's license that had been the source of all her charm and all her leverage. Brad pled to the assault and got probation, which was about right. He was a fist, not a plan. The management company lost the Camden Glen contract, and the board rewrote its rules so that no property can ever be annexed again without verified title and a genuine, in-person, current notarization. I could have moved. People asked me why I stayed on a street that had shunned me, but I understood by then that my neighbors hadn't been cold. They'd been lied to by the same voice and the same warmth that had lied to me. The isolation TAMRA built collapsed the moment the record came out, and what was left, underneath it, were people who'd been fooled and were sorry. Audrey Kim and Ted Lang were the first real friends I made in Raleigh. Not the counterfeit kind, the kind that doesn't come with a survey folded inside it. It's the end of summer now. My pool is quiet. Last week I logged into the Camden Glen portal one final time, found the last record still bearing my name, and deleted it myself, and then closed the account for good. My yard is on no one's map but mine. I kept the doorbell. Janine thought that was strange, after everything it had recorded.
but I keep it for a different reason now than the one I installed it for. I put it up because I was so alone I needed a stranger on a screen to prove the world still existed. I keep it because last Saturday it chimed, and I looked at the app, and it was Audrey and Ted at my gate with a cooler and a store-bought cake, and I had invited them to my yard on my own terms, and the little camera showed me exactly what I'd wanted on a screen all along. Friends, at the door, because I asked them. Here's what makes this one hurt in a way the others don't.
TAMRA Voss didn't just steal a backyard.
She stole a lonely man's only friendship and used it as the crowbar. Every casserole, every favor, every cookout was a line item in a plan she'd written down in February, before she'd done a single kind thing. That's the quiet horror of it. The warmth wasn't the opposite of the crime, it was the mechanism of the crime. She figured out that the fastest way into a man's signature is through the one thing he can't get anywhere else. And for Daniel, divorced, grieving, silent for months, that thing was simply being seen. And notice the cruelest move, the one people miss. She didn't just befriend him, she isolated him first. The rumor that he'd given his yard to the HOA and was one of hers is why the neighbors kept their distance, which made her counterfeit friendship feel like the only warm thing in a cold place. She used the same charm from both directions, warmth to pull him in, a whisper to push everyone else away.
Loneliness wasn't the backdrop of this con, it was the raw material.
The legal spine is worth knowing because it's the part that turned a sad story into a sentence. Trespass alone is minor, but trespass under the color of a forged property right is something else entirely. Forging a recorded real estate instrument is a felony, faking a notarization with a lapsed seal is fraud, and doing it all as an organized scheme for your own commissions stacks into real prison time. A recorded document feels like authority, the police believed it on the spot. But a recording isn't the same as a right. Daniel's whole career was knowing the difference, and his lonely little doorbell camera turned out to be the one witness that couldn't be charmed. So here's the question I'll leave you with.
When someone arrives in your life exactly when you're weakest, and gives you exactly what you're starving for, and asks, so gently you barely notice, the one question that would help them most. Do you hear it? Most of us don't, because we don't want to. Being seen is the one thing almost nobody checks the title on. Daniel survived because in the end, he trusted the record over the warmth. I just wish the record hadn't cost him the only friendship he thought he had.